Okay, everybody, thank you. Welcome. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Francisco Gonzalez, Executive Director of the Economic Club of Miami. Really pleased to have you guys here tonight. And I just want to thank all of our members, and including our guests, some of our guests that are here today. Just to give you a little background of the club, if you're new here, we started this club. I get this question all the time. So when did we start? We started in 2021, only 5 years ago. This club got started. I was actually now part of the club then. We have 4 co-founders of the club, 3 of which are still on the board of directors. And then, we've hosted a lot of really great people over the last 5 years, including Ken Griffin, Peter Thiel, Michael Saylor. We've had 4 members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors come speak. We've had 3 of the current candidates that are still vying to be the next governor of Florida. And so they've come and spoken to the club over the last year. A lot of great people. And now we also have a new milestone to celebrate this week. We've actually now have over 400 active members of the club. And so that's the first time we've hit that. And I'd also like to just ask, I know we have some new members who are at part of the club. If you're here for the first time as a new member, I'd like to recognize you if you would stand. Awesome. Welcome. And we'll get you with those engraved name badges soon. Well, I guess Frank's already got his, huh? Also, I wanted to thank all of our volunteers here tonight as well. And, some of our volunteers are also some of our members. So I know David Dahan, where's David at? He came a little early to help me set up, so thank you, David. But we also have some volunteers who started as a volunteer, and then they became a member. And one of those, where's Tom Brackbill? Is Tom here? Tom, there in the back. Tom, first of all, come up here, Tom. Tom is, the reason I wanted to recognize Tom has actually been volunteering for the club since before I was even part of the club. And he's now in his last week at the University of Miami, Coach. And he's actually got some finals this week, so he came out because we have, a special coach from the University of Miami. We had to have Tom, but I want to thank you, Tom, for all the volunteer work you've done over the last 4 years, and we wish you a lot of success. I also want to mention that Tom is also now a member of the club, but also he's got a job lined up already at Citi, right, in August. So congratulations. Thank you so much. Just wanted to say thank you. We've also got another volunteer who I think might be sitting outside, so he might not hear me, but that's Evgeny, who's also graduating this week from Barry University. And also a few others here today, including Angelica, who you may have met on the way in as well. So thank you all to our volunteers. Also, I mentioned the Economic Club really started as a platform for hosting events, but I think we're really becoming more of like the central convening point of the Miami economic ecosystem with all the different kinds of people we're connecting with and bringing together. And you're going to hear, we have some great board members, including the one that I'm going to introduce in a minute, Alex Binelo here, who also serves on our board of directors. But in addition to the 5 members of our board of directors, we also have 13 members of our advisory board. And I want to recognize the ones that are here as well. Robert Rixer, Brent Vosters, if you guys wouldn't mind standing so people could see you. Where's Brent Vosters? There he is. Brian Lippy, where's Brian? And Nissa Karakos. Thank you so much. Did I miss anybody? We also, this year alone, we've actually already had, this program today is going to end our conclude, I should say, our spring season. And we've already had 4 speakers, 3, and then tonight we've had 2 Federal Reserve Board governors, Lisa Cook and Stephen Moran, who addressed us in February, March. We also heard from our former Florida Speaker of the House, Paul Renner, in January here in this room. And now we have Coach Jim Larrañaga from the University, former head coach of the University of Miami, addressing us tonight. But we also held our 3rd annual conference, our Miami Economic Forum in February, which I know many of you were at. We had Citadel Securities President Jim Esposito there, as well as former Mayor Francis Suarez, who received our first ever Miami Economic Leadership Award. And then there was like 33 total speakers at that event all in one day. So it was an amazing event. So thank you all for being there as well. Traditionally, we typically don't do like big speaker events in the summer. So we'll resume with the full program starting in the fall. But we do have some member-led socials that we will do over the summer. So keep an eye on your inbox. Keep an eye on the very active WhatsApp groups that we have for members. We do have some socials, including cigar socials, pickleball socials. We even have an economic trivia night we have planned coming up. So get your economic thinking caps on for that, and it'll be fun. And before we reconvene again in the fall, of course, America will celebrate its 250th birthday. So we hope you get out there and celebrate that July 4th. I actually had you guys know I like to travel a lot. For those that know me, I had a friend text me, "Where are you going to be traveling to for July 4th?" I said, "Where are you going to celebrate it?" I said, "I think I'm going to celebrate it in America's best city, Miami." So I think that's the best place to do it. But now let me introduce our speakers. First, let me introduce our great member of our board of directors, Alex Binelo. Alex is a partner at De La Hoz, Perez and Barbietto, CPA, where he leads the firm's healthcare, audit, and insurance practice. With over 20 years of experience, he specializes in HMOs, MSOs, diagnostic centers, DME companies, and nonprofit organizations, as well as clients in retail and manufacturing. He is recognized for his expertise in mergers and acquisitions, internal controls, and strategic financial guidance. Prior to joining DPB, he was an equity partner at BDO USA and MBAF. Alex is very involved in the Miami community, born and raised here, has held several leadership roles in the community, including treasurer of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, treasurer of Zoo Miami, chair of the audit committee, and member of the finance committee for the United Way of Miami-Dade, and member of the FIU Dean's Council. He has an MS in taxation and a BA in accounting from Florida International University. So we had to have FIU represented here tonight too.
FIU is present.
FIU's on a roll, by the way, so really, really excelling. And then, of course, we have Jim Larrañaga. Say I pronounced it good the second time. Is one of the most accomplished and respected leaders in college basketball. He's got a really long resume, which I will not read, but I'm going to give you a couple highlights.
Read that.
As the winningest coach in the University of Miami men's basketball history, Coach Larrañaga transformed the program into a national contender, leading the Hurricanes to their first ever Final Four in 2023 and an Elite Eight in 2022 and multiple ACC championships. And who can forget his historic Final Four run with the George Mason Patriots men's basketball team in 2006? I think learning from his history, if you're a team that's never been to the Final Four, Coach L might be the best chance of getting Cinderella to the ball. And I think his wife Liz here probably knows that best. They have 2 sons who have also gone on to careers in the basketball world, as well as 4 grandchildren. His career includes more than 700 wins at the Division I level and a legacy defined not only by results, but by leadership, culture building, and a consistent ability to elevate teams beyond expectations. Coach Larrañaga's journey offers powerful lessons on resilience, discipline, and navigating adversity, and we're really thrilled for his conversation with Alex tonight on really a topic he wanted to give on overcoming obstacles, because there's always obstacles. So let me now turn it over to Alex and Coach L.
Great. Thank you, Francisco, for that introduction, and thank you to all of you, and thank you to Coach. I mean, it's a real honor to have you here. You're a true legend, not only in the University of Miami, but really in college basketball as a whole, and I would say really college athletics overall. So thank you for joining us. It's a true honor to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll jump right in. Let's jump right in. And I think it'd be great for our audience. Let's start with Jim Larrañaga, the man, the person, the family. You were born in New York, but like a lot of us here in Miami, you have ties to Cuba as well. Tell us a little bit about that in your family tree.
Do you mind if I stand?
Of course.
I can't sit still, so. I want to, Francisco, thank you very much for screwing up my name a couple of times. Hey, Francisco, I want you to know you didn't pronounce it right. I don't pronounce it correctly either. I say my name is Jim Larrañaga. That's not right. My grandfather was born and raised in Havana, Cuba. His name was Juan Larrañaga. And then my father was born and raised in Key West, Florida. And then He moved to New York. He met my mom. They raised 6 children in New York. We are devout Catholics. I went to Catholic elementary school, an all-boys Catholic high school, and then I went to an all-boys Catholic college. I don't know what I was thinking. I had no social life whatsoever. But Sean, you're here. Providence College is a great school, right? A PC grad right over there. So that's a little bit of my background. I've been happily married for 54 years. My wife, Liz, is sitting over here.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Providence College. So you go to Providence College, where not only are you a great basketball player, you were the leading scorer your senior year. You go on ahead, you're the team captain, and that ultimately leads to you being drafted to the NBA. However, was coaching always in the plans once your playing career was done?
Okay, I got drafted by the Detroit Pistons, and I decided I wasn't going to play in the NBA. I started my coaching career. Not exactly. But here's exactly what did happen. When I was in the 8th grade, growing up in the Bronx, can you hear me all right, this thing? I'm growing up in the Bronx. I got a scholarship to Archbishop Malloy High School in Queens. And I decided I wanted to go there. It only took me an hour and a half one way on a city bus to get to high school. I didn't get home at night after practice until 9 o'clock every night. But when I was on scholarship, so as a freshman, we had a terrific team. And at December, when we went home for Christmas, we were 7-0, undefeated, playing great. In January, after the new year, I came back for practice, and my high school coach, his name is Jack Curran, Coach Curran called me into his office. He called me Larry, short for Larrañaga. Larry, come on in here. I need to talk to you. Yes, sir, Coach. What's up? Your coach quit. I want you to coach the freshman team. Mr. Curran, you know I'm only 14 years old. That's all right. You'll do a great job. So I coached the freshman team. We went undefeated, 21-0. We won the New York City championship. That was it. I wanted to be a coach the rest of my life.
So let's get a little bit now into, let's get into Miami, our hometown here. Everywhere you read, right, Miami is a growing city. It's exploding with an influx of a population year over year, it seems. And yet, with Miami, growing so tremendously, it's still a relatively small city compared to other metropolitan major cities in the country. Yet, as we continue to grow, the intimacy of Miami is really important. And I think of the story of how you ended up at the University of Miami, and that power of connectivity and who you know in Miami really rings true. Tell us a little bit how you ended up at the University of Miami. I think the members here are going to recognize some of these names that put that together.
Well, when I became a head basketball coach at Bowling Green State University in 1986, I knew I had a lot of things to learn about leadership. So I just started reading every book I could possibly read. It started with The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And it became very, very clear to me, one of the things that I wanted to stress to my coaches and to my teams, how important networking was. How it's all about relationships, building relationships. So I made it my job to just try to get to know everybody that I met. In 2006, my George Mason team made it to the Final Four. And I got a phone call shortly thereafter from Michael Jordan. I know some of you might have heard of him. Michael invited me to work his fantasy camp in Las Vegas. Now, the fantasy camp was for men, not for kids, for men 35 and over. The camp tuition for 3.5 days was $17,500. So you had to be a CEO, an owner of a company. I might be standing in the wrong spot. I'm not sure. Anyway, so Michael Jordan invited my wife and I to come out and work his fantasy camp. So we go there, and all these very successful businessmen are there, and I'm trying to meet as many as I can, and I'm at dinner one night, and these 2 gentlemen sitting next to me, I recognize their names, and they're obviously Cuban, Jose and George Mas. You guys know who that is? Mas Tech. So I'm sitting there, and I said to Jose, hey, Jose, you recognize my ethnic background? He said, yeah, you're Italian, right? I said, no, I'm Cuban. What? Okay, that was in 2006. We stayed in touch for the next 5 years. When the University of Miami head coaching job opened up, I was very, very interested, so I called Jose. The first phone call went like this. Hey, Jose, it's Coach L. I'd love to be involved with the head coaching job at the University of Miami. Can you help me? He said, no, we're going to hire Frank Martin. I said, oh, okay. We hung up, and that was it. A week later, my wife and I went to visit our son. He was the head coach of the NBA G League team in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I get a phone call. Hello? Coach L, it's Jose. Yeah, I think I can get you an interview. Oh, really? Yeah. Send me your resume now. I was like, I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I don't have a resume. And I hung up the phone. I was a little frustrated. And my son, Jay, who's an assistant coach with the Clippers right now, he was the head coach of that G League team then. He said to me, Dad, copy and paste your Wikipedia bio and email it to him. I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard. But I did it. I sent Jose my Wikipedia bio. He brought it to Joe Areola, who brought it to Donna Shalala. A week later, I had an interview. 2 weeks later, I had the job.
Great stuff. So here you go. You take the job at the University of Miami, and I asked this next question really for the benefit of our membership. Our membership is comprised of homegrown Miami talent like myself. I was born and raised here. But a lot of our membership are transplants to Miami. And specifically, I would tell you from the Northeast in New York itself. And so you relocate to Miami. What were some of the obstacles you faced in that relocation? And because some of our members are recent arrivals to Miami. And what helped you, and what were some of the obstacles you faced?
Well, first of all, my wife and I are very inclusive. So for us, the transition was not as difficult as it was for my assistant coaches and their wives. My wife and I were able to afford a very nice home. We live in Pinecrest in a community called Four Phillies. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a community, 28 homes, and all the people who live in Four Phillies work for the university. So, but for us, we were able to reach out to the community. I try to speak as often as I possibly could. I try to get to know as many people as I could. My guests here, Ray and Kareem, Kale, I got to play tennis with Ray. I got to know him. Ray and his family. Have you ever been to the airport and you see Newslink? That's Ray's. So if you're looking for a $50 bottle of water, see Ray. That's his line. That's not mine. I stole that from him. Anyway, but the challenge, I think, is in expense. So for my assistant coaches who were not going to be rewarded financially as much as the head coach, they owned homes at our previous spot, but they sold those homes and they had a rent here. But the one thing, as the leader of our team, I promised them, look, you'll be making certain sacrifices for our team. But if we accomplish what I believe we can, your next step will be a head coach at a major university. And that's exactly what happened. Chris Caputo was my assistant, eventually my associate head coach. He's the head coach at George Washington University. Eric Conkle is now the head coach at Tulsa. Adam Fisher is the head coach at Temple University. Michael Yuga is the head coach at Bowling Green. All my guys were able to move up. So while you're making the transition, you have to understand you're going to have to make some sacrifices, but in the long run, depending on what your goals are. Our goals, we needed to win the ACC. We did it in year 2. We won the ACC regular season title, the tournament championship, and that created a resume for my assistants where they were able to go on. And I think that's the case. Some of you will be able to make the transition a lot easier, like my wife and I did. We made so many great friends. but some other folks it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I hope that it answers your question, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, you've been here now, I guess you arrived in 2011. Is that correct? Been here now quite a few years. How had you seen the University of Miami change since you arrived, and even the city of Miami itself?
I don't think you can recognize the University of Miami. Have you been on campus? If you haven't been on campus, the dormitories, do you know, my staff and I, we went around to the dorms when I first got here. And so when we brought in a kid, when you recruit, you bring kids in, you show them around. I told my staff in our first meeting after we toured the campus, I said, look, no matter what we do, don't show them the dormitories. The mom will walk out of there and say, forget it. But if you've been on campus now, oh my goodness, Lakeside Village is spectacular, Centennial Village. Our grandson, James, is a freshman at the U. And he tells us, on the best floor in Centennial. Like, he's got the best floor. But the campus has exploded in beauty, and it continues to grow that way. And the city is the same way. My wife and I were driving on Ponce, and they're redoing the whole from the metro all the way into the city. They're going to have bike paths and trees and walking paths. And Brickell there's like a new high-rise going up like every day. And tech companies are coming into the city. This city is it's so beautiful. Just look out there. You don't get that everywhere. And it's fantastic. So my wife and I, we just love it. You can clap for that, by the way. That's your city.
And let's get a little bit now into NIL, and maybe take a brief moment to describe to some of our audience members what NIL is. But I guess the question is, obviously NIL has completely transformed college athletics recently. What have you seen are the major impacts to NIL? And maybe take a second to explain what NIL is in case some of our members.
So 2 things happened at the same time. The first is called the transfer portal. That gives a student athlete the opportunity to put his or her name into a portal and make themselves available to transfer to any place else in the country. And a student can transfer after his freshman year, after his sophomore year, after his junior year, and after his senior year. And there are many student athletes that are doing that. They're transferring 3 or 4 times. The reason is NIL. NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And the idea was, and it started in the Olympics, is great athletes can earn a living by doing commercials. You see these athletes on TV all the time. Steph Curry doing Subway commercials, and so many other athletes, Shaq. So they wanted to create that opportunity for college student athletes. The only thing is, nobody was putting the student athletes on TV, on commercials. So the universities just decided, we'll just pay them. And so NIL basically is professional sports. That's what college athletics has become. It's really professional. Every athlete has his own agent, has his own NIL deal, and is being paid a salary. For example, if you were to follow college basketball right now, for a big man, 6'10" or bigger, the average salary is $5 million for 1 year. For a point guard, the guy who quarterbacks your team, $3 million. For a good shooter, a three-point shooter, $2 to $3 million. And so schools are paying $10 to $20 million for their basketball team. Football is far greater than that. It's 20 to 30 million, maybe more. So NIL has changed it. Now, it's also changed relationships, and that's why I'm no longer coaching. I dealt with it. I had to raise the money for NIL and then pay the players, and then I couldn't develop the same relationship that I had for 40 years. So that's why I stepped away. It's probably why I'm here tonight and not out recruiting.
Tell us a little bit. I remember the story you mentioned to me once regarding the University of Miami basketball team. And here you go, you make the run to the Final Four, and you're trying to bring the guys back the following year because they had such great success, yet NIL gets in the way.
Okay, so what happened is we made it to the Final Four, which is the epitome of a college basketball program. All right? In business, that's your apex. You can get to the Final Four. You're one of the best 4 basketball programs in the country. So I'm all excited and ready to celebrate when we get back to Coral Gables. And as I do every year, I call every player in one by one to talk about my vision for him moving forward towards the next season. The first guy came in, and I said, look, you had a great year. We made to the Final Four. I hope you enjoyed it, Coach. It was awesome. It was great. I love Miami. I said, good, because we need to start talking about next year. He said, yeah, I'm going to put my name in the portal. I said, what? You're going to leave? He said, yeah, my coach told me, my high school coach told me I can get $500,000 if I put my name in the portal. I was like, oh my goodness. So he left. The next guy came in, said exactly the same thing. 8 guys, one at a time, 8 guys were leaving to put their name in the portal. So like all of us, if you can get a better paying job, you're interested in that. And they have agents and coaches who are encouraging them to do that. And that's when I started to ask myself, ooh, this new normal is probably not for me.
Yeah. And
Wait a minute, you're clapping because I stopped coaching? Yeah, it's NIL.
one more question on NIL. Obviously, it's benefiting the players. It's benefiting their families. They're making money that logically perhaps they would have never made in some cases. Is there an argument to be made that if a school goes out and spends the money correctly and that sports program is successful for having spent that money, is there an argument to be made that that money will trickle down to the community? So the University of Miami, right, their football team just made the national championship this past year. Is there an argument to be made that the city of Miami somehow benefits from that?
How many of you knew that our Miami football team went to the national championship? Everybody followed it. What happened to the restaurants during our run? What about the hotels when Indiana came in for the national championship? What about the TV exposure and the branding that created for the University of Miami? No, NIL has created the opportunity for universities who want to invest big time to benefit big time by winning. If you can win, if you can get to the national championship in football or get to the Final Four, I'll give you one simple example. In 2006, when our George Mason team made it to the Final Four, the bookstore on campus normally, now I know this for a fact, normally did $11,000 worth of business in a typical week. When we made the Final Four, they did $1 million in a week. Okay, that's not possible. Oh yeah? You know how many t-shirts they sold? 32,000 t-shirts at $20 a pop. How much is that, accountants?
A lot. Need the calculator, that's a lot.
$640,000 they took in on just selling t-shirts. So the amount of income generated during the NCAA basketball tournament and during the college football players is enormous. And for the schools, the universities that do well, like Indiana, like Miami, like our Miami team did when we got to the Final Four, those are all spin-offs of winning. And every businessman knows if you win, you're successful. If you lose, well, you don't want to lose.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Final Four. Let's get into the Final Four. You take 2 programs to the Final Four, and in both cases, it's the first time that program ever made it to the Final Four. And in both cases, it's the last time that team ever got to the Final Four. You took George Mason and the University of Miami. Tell us what it is to make that run, and what are the behind the scenes that we normally don't get exposure to? What is it to take a team to the Final Four? How does that happen?
Okay, let me ask you a question. You're all in the business world. You're not really basketball coaches or football coaches, right? Now, but my career is business. We had to create a vision, a crystal clear picture of what we were trying to accomplish. How many of you play golf? Okay, a few. How many of you have ever heard of Dr. Bob Rotella? Only a few. Okay, so I got to explain. Dr. Bob Rotella is a world-famous sports psychologist. If you watch the Masters, who won the Masters?
Rory McIlroy.
Rory McIlroy. And who's his coach? Dr. Bob Rotella. He's the sports psychologist. He's the guy who works on the mental side of the game. He's also one of my best friends. So when our George Mason team, I felt like going into the 2005-2006 season that we could have a great season, I called Dr. Rotella and invited him up to speak to the team. Now we're talking in October. The Final Four is in March. But every good business person knows it's about your vision of what you think you can accomplish. It all starts mentally. Everything you do is created twice, first mentally, then physically. So we brought Bob Rotella in, and he spoke to the team, and he asked our players, someone raise their hand and tell me, how good do you think you can be? And Lamar Butler, who was a senior co-captain, he raised his hand. He said, I think we can get to the Final Four. And then Bob Rotella said to the team, then from now on, you are no longer college basketball fans. I was like, what? Bob, what do you mean? You're no longer fans. Do not listen to the so-called experts on TV talk about how great Carolina is and how great Kentucky is and how great UCLA is. You start thinking about how you're going to beat them because those are the teams you have to beat to get to the Final Four. So he helped me create the vision in October, which allowed us, you have to lay a foundation to get to the Final Four. The same thing was true at the University of Miami. When my staff and I, when we got here, we played the Duke, the number one team in the country, all the experts said we were going to get drilled, going to get killed, right? So before the game, I'm in the locker room talking to my team, and I tell them, look, all the experts say we're going to get killed tonight. They have good reason. They have Coach K. He's the winningest coach in college basketball history. They have 5 starters who are all going to be playing in the NBA in a year or two. All right? And we're Miami. We're mostly noted as a football team. But what I want to tell you is we're better than them. And you need to walk out on the court understanding we're going to kick their butts and show the world how good we are. All right? So we went out, and I'm worried now. I'm sweating like, oh, my God, what did I do? And we didn't beat them. We crushed them by 27 points that night. It's the largest defeat by a number one team in the country in the history of college basketball. We beat them by 27. And so a lot of success is based on your vision and leadership as to how you create that picture of what you can accomplish. Oh, thanks, Alex.
Thank you. And so you take the 2 teams to the Final Four, George Mason and Miami, and I'm sure those journeys create a lifetime of memories, and I'm sure there's endless stories in each of those runs. If you had to pick one story, what would be your favorite story from both George Mason and the University of Miami?
Okay, I'll start with George Mason because 68 teams get into the NCAA tournament and you're seeded 1 through 16. We were an 11th seed. We're supposed to lose in the first round. So we have to play Michigan State, who's one of the powerhouses. They've been to the Final Four the year before. We had to play them. We beat them. And then the next game, we had to beat North Carolina. They were the defending national champions. We beat them. Then we played Wichita State. We beat them. Now we had to play the number one team in the country and the University of Connecticut. They were seeded number one, and the overall number one seed, and all the experts predicted they would win the the national championship. So before the game, I had to send a good message to him. Now, our George Mason team, we belong to the Colonial Athletic Association, known as the CAA. So before the game, in the locker room, I said to the guys, look, the University of Connecticut players don't know anything about us. They don't even know we belong to the CAA. And our players, I kind of nodded, and I said, no, we're not the Colonial Athletic Association today. We're the Connecticut's Assassins Association. And we're going to shoot these guys down. Do you understand? Everybody understand that? And they all nodded. We went out. We played a fantastic game. We're up 2 points with 5 seconds to go. We got our best free throw shooter on the foul line. He's got a 1-on-1 and he misses. And Connecticut goes down the floor and scores a layup to tie the game at 74 to put the game into overtime. And the crowd that had been screaming, yelling, going crazy for George Mason and the upset now was deadly silent. And I could see our players coming over. They were so discouraged. Their heads were down. So they got in front of me and I said, look, all eyes on me. All eyes on me. Look, we didn't play defense for 5 seconds. But we need to play great defense for 5 minutes. But you know what? There isn't any place on earth that I'd rather be right now than here with you guys with a chance to get to the Final Four. Where else would you rather be? And they all just nodded and they said, no, coach, let's go out and show these guys. And we did. And we beat them 86-84 in overtime. Our University of Miami team, we won the ACC that year. We were probably, in my mind, not only the best team, but a real shot at getting to the Final Four, except we played Duke in the semifinals, and our best player, the leading rebounder in the ACC, and he ended up being the leading rebounder in the NCAA, he sprained his ankle in the first minute of play. We can't win without him. And our trainers, our doctors said, he's out. He's probably done. It's probably going to take 2 weeks to get that ankle well enough to actually play. So I met with him. His name is Norshad Omir. He's from Nicaragua. His first language is Spanish. I'm Cuban. I don't speak a word of Spanish. So I got to be sure I'm communicating properly with Norshad. And I just said to him, hey, Chad, look, your ankle is bad. Doctors say it's going to take 2 weeks. But let me ask you a question. You want to play in the NCAA tournament or not? And he said, yeah. I said, you got to put 2 weeks worth of work into 1 week. You got to be with our trainer night and day until you can get that ankle well enough. And the great thing is when you have leaders, guys, the most important job of a leader is create more leaders. Right? And Norshad was becoming a true leader in our program, and he understood, said, tell me what I have to do, and I'm going to do it. And he did. He worked night and day for an entire week. We played in the first round. He was not 100%, but he was still our best rebounder and terrific player. And because of that, he was able to help us beat Drake and beat Indiana in the first 2 games and eventually help us get to the Final Four.
And if I remember correctly, Coach, there was a story regarding your George Mason team where, and I think it exemplifies your leadership, where there was a very prominent player on George Mason, and I think it was to make the NCAA tournament, who gets suspended. And you had to make the very difficult decision whether to play the player or not play the player. And so share that story. I think it's...
Okay. I want to tell you where this young man is now. I suspended him. He punched a guy in the gut during our tournament. We ended up losing the game, and I suspended him for the next game. But he's now the head coach of George Mason. And he's doing great. But his name is Tony Skinn, and here's what happened. We were winning. We won the regular season. We were fighting to get to the NCAA tournament. and we happened to be losing to Hofstra, and he'd been fighting with this kid, Lauren Stokes, all game long, and elbowing and stuff, and he finally just got frustrated and actually just hauled off and punched Lauren. I remember after the game, after I suspended him, I went home and watched it on ESPN, and, instant replay. Bam, they showed it. I was like, oh. Then they show it again in slow motion. Bam. And I'm like dying. But here's what I'm going to talk a little bit about this, I think, in the next question or two, is about leadership. If you create a set of values, and then the moment of truth comes where you've got to decide whether or not to compromise your values or to meet the standard that you set, right? So our players know my philosophy is based on 3 words: attitude, commitment, and class. And class is about behavior. You have to behave in a first-class manner. So when Tony struck that player, bad behavior, I took him out, we lost the game, and I suspended him, even though that could have cost us an invitation to the NCAA tournament. We didn't know if we were getting in or not. And everybody projected us not to get in when I announced that Tony was suspended. But the standard is the standard. And Tony knew. I said, look, everybody knows what I'm all about. And that was not the kind of behavior that exemplifies our program. So Tony's going to be suspended. The great thing, though, Tony understood it. He accepted it. He sat out the first game. The next game we played North Carolina, and he hit the game-winning free throws to get us into the next round.
Amazing story. And speaking of leadership, right? Let's get into that topic now. You're in the process of creating a podcast on leadership and teamwork. Tell us where you are with that, and when can we expect the podcast to be available to us?
Well, the podcast won't be until the fall because we've got still a lot of work ahead. But let me explain a little bit about my vision of what I think coaching is all about, because I always saw myself, like my high school coach, an educator, a teacher. And although I wanted to teach my guys the game of basketball, if all I ever did with my life was to teach them how to dribble, pass, and shoot, I wouldn't think my life was very worthwhile. I wanted to prepare them for when they weren't bouncing the basketball anymore. I wanted them to have the skills that would create success and happiness for them. So I developed a philosophy based on those 3 words: attitude, commitment, and class. And I would tell the players, look, attitude is simply this: life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Right? So be positive. Have a positive attitude towards everything you do. Second, commitment is about making a total and unconditional commitment to being the best that you can be. And that means at all 4 levels: physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that would be the message to my players. And the last was class. Always carry yourself in a first-class manner. Take great pride in who you are and who you represent: your family, your church, your community, your team, your university. And those are the messages that were delivered every single day by me and my staff. So those were the things that we wanted our players to leave college with a degree in hand, knowing that they learned a lot more than just how to dribble the basketball.
Great points, Coach. So a large portion of coaching and really in life in general is about overcoming obstacles. You, as a major D1 coach, likely face obstacles on a daily basis. What have you found, or what can you share with us, are the guiding principles to overcoming obstacles?
Well, those I just shared about attitude, commitment, and class. If you have a set of values that are important to you, in building a program, it's really about, the first thing you have to establish a culture. Like, what do you stand for? What does your program stand for? What is your organization? What is your company? What do you mean? Why would I want to be involved with you? The second thing is leadership. The leader has to create a vision, a crystal clear picture of what he or she believes the team should be able to accomplish. The leader has to have the ability to inspire, to motivate, and then empower the members of the team to reach far beyond what they thought they were capable of doing. Our George Mason team, they didn't know we could get to the Final Four until Rotella came in. Right? You have to have that ability. Now, teamwork is about the members of the team knowing their role and being able to execute their role. But that's not enough. You not only have to know your role, you have to know your teammates' role. And you got to be able to help them. That's synergy, where you're working together, where everybody's on the same page, and you are committed to helping each other physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. All right? That's what it's all about. And it eventually comes down to one word for the coach and every player. It comes right down to as a parent. And the one word is discipline. And my definition of discipline is simply do what you're supposed to do it when you're supposed to do it, and do it to the best of your ability every single day. If you do those things, you have a chance to compete and be successful no matter what you're competing at.
Right, and I think that's great advice. Obviously, not only in the coaching world, but I think in the business world in general, where most of us reside in our day-to-day lives. So I have a couple questions left. I do want to leave time to open up to questions to the audience, so I'll ask just a couple more. But you retired from coaching December 2024.
Yep.
And yet you remain living here in Miami. Why did you stay in Miami?
Are you serious? This is the best place I've ever lived. Miami's the greatest. I mean, my wife and I, we love it. Our grandsons, they would come down for basketball camp. My granddaughter would come down to basketball camp. And my grandson now is a freshman at the U because he fell in love with Miami as well. Coral Gables, Pinecrest, Coconut Grove, Brickell, the city. You know, this is just a great environment to be a part of such great people. I mean, I've gotten to know so many great people. I mentioned Ray and Kareen, also a friend of mine. My wife walks by his house every day because we got this beautiful neighborhood. Angel Gallinal, he's a businessman in town and very supportive of the University of Miami. When you get to know people like that, like Jose and George Mas, the university is so great. Our president, our administration, they're just wonderful people to be around. So, and for me, it's all about relationships. Now, my wife and I have been able to develop such great relationships with people. We're never going to leave. Are we? One more person who's here, I didn't introduce yet, but my wife was nodding. Don't forget Emily. Emily is one of those people, even though she went to the University of Michigan and was a great swimmer at Michigan, she's moved to Miami and she works in our development department. So Emily, can you stand and be recognized?
All right, so you've had some time now to enjoy life outside of coaching. What's next for Coach L?
Well, it's funny. In 2006, I got a phone call from a radio station. They wanted to interview me, and they asked that same question. Hey, now what's next? And I said to her, you know, what I'd love to do is do corporate speaking. I wish the Washington Speakers Bureau would reach out to me because I'd like to send my message to the corporate world. I got to my office 5 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was the Washington Speakers Bureau. And I did 85 speaking engagements for them that year. I love to do corporate speaking. I hope you're enjoying this evening. If you think I'm doing a good job, pass the word and ask your friends to bring me in so I can share my message with you. I'm teaching a leadership class to freshmen at the university. I have a radio show on WQAM 104.3. I was in the process of writing a book. I've had to put that on hold, and I've started an idea of having a podcast sometime in the fall. So that's keeping me pretty busy.
Very, very busy. Well, thank you so much. I do have one more question, and it's really a self-indulging question, if you don't mind for a minute. I do have two boys, and those of you wondering who the little kids here are, those are my two boys. They stepped out somewhere, but I told them I wouldn't embarrass them. But what would be your advice, and as parents, right? If you have kids that aspire to someday play high school sports, maybe that's their goal. What would be your advice, not only to the children, but really to the parents, in how to handle that process?
I have two sons. My wife and I have two sons, and we had the same goals for them. I think the most important thing is tell your children to listen to their parents. You're the adults. You can help them through this process. And if you have strong values and they learn from you, then they'll make good decisions. Alex's sons, Alex and Santi, are young boys, but they want to be athletes. So what do you have to do to be successful? You got to spend time. You got to work hard. You got to make a commitment. There's no secrets. And if they do that, they're not going to succeed all the time. There's going to be failure. And what do? You learn from failure and you try to improve. And that's a message that's true for all of us, isn't it? I mean, I've failed. I've lost games and felt miserable that I let my team down, my university down, but you keep fighting through it. The challenges are difficult, but you tell your sons, you tell your daughters, hey, keep plugging away.
Hey, thank you, Coach. Thank you for that advice, and round of applause for Coach.
The other thing is, when my sons complain, I just say, go see your mother.
There he is. We took notes for you, don't worry. But I do want to thank you again. You're an institution here at the University of Miami in the city, and not only for having such great success coaching, but for the man you are and the person you are, and your family, Liz, and everybody. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I do want to turn it over to Francisco, where if there's any questions in the crowd.
Rachel has a question. Rachel's in the back. She told me she had a question. She's in the back row, Francisco. Did you think of a question now?
So my question is, in Sharif Boy, you said they broke coach made you and coach, and I'm curious why. Was it your parenting, your upbringing? Where did you learn such strong values? And how to inspire other people?
Okay, first of all, my high school coach recruited me and gave me a scholarship to come to high school. And we immediately bonded. And he was an absolutely tremendous role model for me. For those of you, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, a lot of coaches use vulgarity in coaching and motivating. Did you know that? They scream and yell at the players. My high school coach never used the vulgarity. We know each other for 50 years. We were best friends. After I graduated, he helped me get into coaching. He never used the vulgarity. He went to Mass. He's a devout Catholic. He went to Mass every single day of his life. So he was my mentor and my role model. So I'd never use vulgarity with my players, ever. And so when you're learning good values from my parents, from my coach, and those are the people that I'm listening to, and he gives me the confidence to coach the freshman team. I'm a player coach. I'm not just a coach, but I have to play as well. I ran a lot of plays for myself. I got a lot of shots that year. I didn't. No, I got a lot, but I did. Did I answer your question, Rachel? I don't know. Okay.
A time manager question.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through, I don't know, the day in your life or a week in your life?
Oh, my favorite, time management. How many of you have ever read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Yeah. Okay. that's how I learned to be a head coach. And how many of you have ever heard of the Franklin Daily Planner? So your daily plan. So I can tell you for my entire coaching career, this was my schedule. Honestly, you don't think it's true. I know you'll go, he's exaggerating. I'm not. My wife, ask her. My alarm went off at 7 a.m. I was normally awake before that. I leisurely ate my breakfast, showered, shaved, got ready for work, got dressed, and then I sat down and planned my day. Okay? I left the house at 9 o'clock. I didn't leave at 8. I left at 9 after everything was in order. All right? I met with my staff from 9:30 to 12 every day. At 12 o'clock, we went to lunch from 12 to 1. At 1 o'clock, I started meeting with individual players. I met with one player at 1, then 1:30, then 2, then 2:30. Then we met with the whole team at 3. We practiced, we did our workouts, and finished up about 6. I meet with my staff briefly. I get home 6:30. I'd have dinner with my wife at 7. And then I'd get on the phone and start calling and texting recruits and their parents and AAU coaches and everybody else until 11 o'clock at night. Every day. No days off. We're on vacation. My schedule tried to remain as close to that day. I am a man of routine. I'll share this. It's not a good thing, but if your sons are here, close their ears. When I was in high school, my routine was I got up at 6:30. I left the house at 6:45. I got to school at 8:15. At lunchtime, I had the same lunch every day for 4 years. 10 Reese's peanut butter cups. That's all. Charles, am I telling the truth? She's nodding. Yeah. I have been so routine my whole life. So my coaching career from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, every single day. When I was on the road recruiting and traveling, I tried to stay on top of that. Oh, congratulations.
Oh, yeah, you my birthday. I know that was tough for me with my routine, but I've been playing professional for and I do transition. How do you talk to your players that want that result here that say didn't start an NBA career or went out the transition to the real world?
Yeah, one of the things I love, my wife will tell you, I stay in touch with all my former players. I won't say all, but the ones who really like staying in touch and communicating and looking for advice. So the two most recent, Tanya Jakiri, who's 7-foot center on our ACC championship team, he called me. He's playing professional basketball over in Europe, and he called me and said, Coach, he graduated in 2016. So he's out 10 years. He's now 32, 33 years old. He said, I'm going to transition, and I want to be a women's soccer coach. He's 7 feet tall from Nigeria. He wants to coach women's soccer. I said, okay. I've set him up with an internship with our women's soccer coach at the university, and he's going to learn. I also set him up with the sports administrator who's going to help him learn the administrator's side of college sports. That's Tanya Jakiri. Another one is Harlan Beverly. Harlan Beverly was on our Final Four team, and he after he graduated, he said to me, Coach, he was one of those 8 guys. He came in, he said, I'm leaving. I've been told I can get $500,000 if I transfer. So he did. And so he went to Europe afterwards and played a couple of years of pro ball. And he called me and he said, I'm not going to play any more pro basketball. They're not paying me as much as I made for NIL. I said, oh my goodness. So what are you going to do? He said, well, I always wanted to get to coaching, so I'd like you to help me get to coaching. So I'm laying the foundation for him to become first a high school coach and then a college coach. So I think it's very important, that transition. Our own sons had to do that. Our son Jay played 12 years of pro ball in Europe. And then when he came back, helped him get the job with the Erie Bayhawks. He ended up in the G League, and then with the Boston Celtics, and now with the LA Clippers. Our son John played a couple of years, 3 years of pro ball, and he ended up going to work for a friend of mine who owned an insurance company, and now he's an entrepreneur. So there is a transition period. We try to help all our players with that. Question?
My name is Dean Maisonable. Small town of southwestern Massachusetts. Then the Zayona is about the basketball, but y'all about there was a German town of paper parts. Ray Flair. Did you play around here?
He's older than me. I know Ray. He became mayor of Boston. Yeah.
So in any event, so I just want to know that. Saturday, Baku Rotella, Rotella, Ray that I am knowing, I read his word, but Walter Star came a perfect, and how you for about 2 weeks of my game, and then I walked to how and he worked, he carved his whole team at the players. That was one thing, but he did usually advise, there's 10 funds on like, and they keep you about the obviously.
Okay. I call Bob Rotella 3 times a week to coach me. I mean, there's so many things in coaching that he can direct me to think. All he does is help you think correctly. So this one night, I had a team at George Mason that was struggling. We lost 4 in a row, but I thought we were really, really good. I needed my starting unit to just calm down, enjoy playing together more. So I decided I wasn't going to start them. I'd start my second unit. And the players were like in disbelief that I was going to do it. It was the biggest game of the year. It was a sellout crowd. We were playing our arch rivals on television. When I came home, I told my wife, and she said, "You better call Rotella." So I called Bob, and his wife, Darlene, answered the phone. I said, "Darlene, I need to speak with Bob." And he said, "Well, he's not really reachable. He's out in California, and there's no phone number." And she said, "Why? What's so important?" I said, "Well, I'm not going to start my starting unit tomorrow. I'm going to start the subs, and it's the biggest game of the season." She said, "Okay, call him at 718. So I did, but he didn't answer. But I ended up starting the second unit. It ended up working out. We won the game. And then I called Bob, and he told me, keep doing it. Not that you have to not start them, but keep playing everybody. Make your mantra total team effort. Everybody's involved. Give them some goals. Give your second unit goals when they come in." And so I did. We won 10 straight. We won the conference regular season. We won the conference tournament, made the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. That's a Rotella.
First thing you do, is that, like you, I both be here the Dapper Brand Pool, the year it's just a very, and 4 years been a Dapper Sports high school. And my question is that, now, it varies the same thing, but in terms of discipline, a lot of that discipline is imposed. It's imposed sometimes physically. But I'm wondering if that experience, and sometimes in they got out, they felt so suppressed and they rebelled. They rebelled and I answer. Others, learn from it, they embraced it, and it really helped them inspire others. That was an important part of work approach.
Did everybody hear the question? Yep. Because 2 of my teammates rebelled in high school, and it short-circuited their basketball careers. But for me, my high school coach was such an important figure in my life, and it was that way. I met him when I was 13, and he passed away when I was 63. So for 50 years, and I talked to him like I talked to Rotella. He gave me a lot of great advice. And I had players in my own program who came from programs where they had no freedom. There was such discipline. And they came into my program and wanted to rebel. But my great joy is being able to spend time with them individually and let them know how important self-discipline is. And thank goodness, almost all of them, not all, but almost all of them would take it to heart and understand that we have their best interest at heart. Well, everybody, thank you very much for your attention this evening.